Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're embarking on a journey into a truly profound and ancient piece of wisdom. It's something that speaks directly to some of our most persistent modern challenges, you know? Things like the gnawing anxieties, those paralyzing fears, and, well, that constant human struggle for control. We're going to delve into a powerful phrase that has served as a spiritual anchor for centuries. It offers not just solace, but really a practical blueprint for resilience and an enduring inner peace. We're looking at a single, incredibly potent verse from the Quran. It's from Surah Āl Imrān, verse 173, which declares, Hasbunā Allāhu wa ni'mal wakil. Now, this is often translated as Allah is sufficient for us, and He is the best disposer of affairs. But it's far more than just the phrase you might utter. It is a profound declaration of faith, an active reliance on the divine, and actually a strategic release of control, which sounds fascinating. Our mission for this deep dive is to understand this verse from multiple interconnected angles. We'll explore its compelling historical roots, its deep linguistic and theological meaning, and maybe most importantly, how its practical application can utterly transform a believer's life. It offers a kind of roadmap for navigating uncertainty. So get ready for some truly surprising insights, I think, and an insightful journey into a concept that merges deep spirituality with intensely practical living.
Absolutely. And what's truly fascinating here, as you said, is how a single, concise statement, just what, a handful of words, how it can encapsulate such a vast and comprehensive theological and psychological framework. This isn't just a simple religious utterance or, a comforting mantra you repeat. It's really a carefully constructed formula designed to cultivate a very specific, powerful state of mind. It's about forging a foundational, almost unshakable relationship with the Creator, one that really redefines where a person seeks their ultimate support and security. We'll explore how this concept of absolute reliance is truly the bedrock for navigating life's complexities.
Okay, let's unpack this powerful phrase then. Starting with its first foundational half, Hasbunā Allāhu. For someone maybe unfamiliar with its depth, what does it truly mean to say Allah is sufficient for us? Is it just enough?
All right, that's a great place to start. The core of Hasbunā Allāhu lies in the Arabic root word asbu, and it's far richer than just a simple translation of enough. This isn't about being enough in a minimal sense, like having just enough money to scrape by or just enough energy to finish the day. That's not quite it. No, when we use asbu in this context, it signifies sufficient, adequate, or enough in an overwhelmingly comprehensive, all-encompassing way. It carries this weight of total completeness and abundance. So when a believer declares Hasbunā Allāhu, they are proclaiming that Allah is enough to fulfill all of a person's needs. And this is a really crucial defining distinction.
All needs, like everything.
Everything. We're talking about needs that span the entire human experience, from the deeply spiritual, that longing for meaning and purpose, to emotional needs for peace, security, love, all the way to fundamental material needs like sustenance, health, protection. It's a statement that covers every conceivable aspect of existence. It suggests there's no void left unfilled.
Wow, okay. That's much bigger than just enough.
Exactly. And furthermore, this statement is also an exclusive declaration. It's not saying Allah is one of many sources of sufficiency. It's asserting that Allah alone is the ultimate source, the only ultimate source of all power, all support, all sufficiency. And this immediately and quite profoundly nullifies any reliance on created beings, whether that's seeking constant validation from other people or depending solely on, the approval of a boss or spouse.
Or social media likes.
Or social media likes, exactly. It nullifies reliance on material possessions, too, accumulating wealth, property, or even on one's own personal capabilities, like intelligence or strength, as the ultimate source of security or happiness. It firmly establishes that the true, final, and the only unfailing source of everything is the divine.
That's a powerful distinction, that comprehensive sufficiency. But for many, a declaration like this might just sound like, well, a comforting thought, a wishful prayer, perhaps. How does it elevate beyond mere comfort? How does it truly become a foundational theological declaration about reality itself, something that profoundly alters a person's daily experience and maybe even how they pursue their goal?
That's a critical question. And you're right, it's not just a feel-good statement. It is absolutely a cornerstone of Islamic monotheism, or Tawhid, the absolute oneness of God. By saying this, a believer establishes an incredibly profound foundation for inner peace. Think about it in our modern context, right? If you truly, deep down, believe that Allah alone is your ultimate source of sufficiency, it immediately eliminates that constant, often exhausting human need to seek validation, security, or aid from any other source.
Right, the constant pressure.
Exactly. Consider the anxieties born from the relentless pursuit of social media likes, as you mentioned, or the fear of professional failure, or that constant comparison with others. This statement provides a counter-narrative. It provides a profound psychological release from the crushing burdens of worldly expectations and dependencies. It's a complete mental recalibration. It shifts your entire perspective on where true support, true worth, and true security ultimately come from. It's, in a way, a declaration of independence from the fleeting and the unreliable.
Okay, so if we've established that deep meaning of divine sufficiency, what happens when we take that belief a step further? When we actively entrust our future to the divine? That seems to be where the second half comes in. Tawakkul. And he is the best disposer of affairs. What does this add, and why is that word best so important?
Yes. Here's where it truly gets fascinating and where the active element comes in. Al-Wakil is one of Allah's beautiful names, and it denotes a trustee, a guardian, an administrator, someone who takes full, active responsibility for the matters entrusted to him. It's not a passive guardianship, as if he's merely watching from afar. It's an active, engaged, and trusting. So when you declare Allah as your wakil, you're making a conscious, deliberate act of delegation. You're essentially saying, look, I've done my part, I've put in the effort, and now I completely entrust my affairs, my future, the outcomes of my efforts, fully to you.
Because he's the most capable.
Because you are the most capable, the most knowledgeable. Exactly. And the word nima is incredibly significant here. As you highlighted, it's a superlative. It translates to the best, the most excellent, the most perfect. This exalts the act of trust and the nature of the trustee to the highest possible degree. It indicates that Allah's management of affairs is perfect, flawless, infinitely wise, and just inherently superior to any human plan, calculation, or strategy we could ever devise, no matter how intricate or well thought out it might seem to us.
So it gives you confidence in that delegation.
Complete confidence. It assures the believer that their trust is placed in the most competent, most benevolent, and most powerful hands imaginable. It's like hiring the absolute, undisputed world expert to manage your most complex and vital project, but infinitely more profound.
So it's not just a passive acceptance of whatever happens then, it's an active submission, a conscious, deliberate delegation of control.
Precisely. That's the key distinction. By declaring Allah to be the wakul, the believer consciously cedes control over the ultimate outcomes of their efforts. It's an acknowledgement of Allah's absolute omniscience and wisdom, the understanding that He knows what's best for us, even when we, with our limited perception, our limited view, cannot possibly comprehend it. This profound act of submission, it frees the believer from the crippling anxiety of uncertain outcomes. You've done your part, you've exhausted your means, you've tied your camel, as we'll discuss later, and now you know your most crucial affairs are in the hands of the most competent, most benevolent, most powerful protector. This shift in perspective from constantly trying to control every variable and predict every future outcome to entrusting the ultimate result to the divine. It's incredibly liberating for the human spirit.
I can see that.
It removes that immense pressure of bearing all responsibility for results we can't actually guarantee, allowing for a deep, abiding peace regardless of external circumstances.
Now, this powerful phrase, Ḥasbunā Allāhu wa ni'mal wakīl, it didn't just appear out of thin air, did it? It has a very specific and frankly dramatic historical context, rooted in a pivotal moment of early Islamic history. The Battle of Uhud. This wasn't just a battle, it was, as you hinted, a deeply painful divine lesson, wasn't it? Can you walk us through that crucible?
It absolutely was a crucible. The Battle of Uhud was, well, a moment of intense trial and profound learning for the early Muslim community. It came after their stunning victory at Badr, so expectations were maybe different. And the initial stages of Uhud actually saw the Muslim forces gaining the upper hand. They were pushing the enemy, the Quraysh of Mecca, into disarray, into retreat. It really looked like another decisive victory was at hand. You can imagine the feeling, the momentum.
Right, confidence must have been high.
Very high. However, a critical error occurred. An error which dramatically shifted the tide of the battle and provided, as you said, a profound lesson in human psychology and divine trust. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had strategically placed a group of 50 archers on a vital pass, a small hill overlooking the battlefield. And he instructed them emphatically, very clearly, do not leave your posts, regardless of the battle's turn.
No matter what.
No matter what. He reportedly told them, even if you see us being snatched by birds, do not leave your position until I send for you. Pretty clear instructions. Yet, as the Muslim forces appeared to be winning and the enemy was retreating, many of these archers, seeing the spoils of war being collected down below, well, they succumbed to the allure of immediate material gain. They reasoned amongst themselves, the battle is over, let's go collect our share. This act of disobedience, driven by, well, worldly attachment and a premature assumption of victory,
Right.
led to a swift and devastating reversal. Khalid ibn Walid, who was then a leader of the Quraysh cavalry, not yet a Muslim, seized the opportunity. He saw the gap, circled around the now unguarded pass, and launched a surprise attack from the rear.
Oh, wow. Right into their flank.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, almost a victory turned into a temporary but very costly defeat. It caused significant losses among the Muslim ranks, including many prominent companions. Even the Prophet himself was injured. It was a moment of deep anguish, confusion, and despair for the community. A stunning blow to their morale after the High of Badr.
So what does this all mean then? What was the profound lesson here, beyond the immediate military setback and obviously the consequence of disobedience? What was the human element in that error, and how did that decision play out in the chaos? What must it have felt like for those who witnessed it?
Well, the lesson was agonizingly clear, wasn't it? Victory doesn't come solely from material strength or numerical superiority or even initial tactical brilliance. It comes fundamentally from unwavering obedience to divine commands and absolute reliance on Allah's grace and plan, even when circumstances seem to favor you, maybe especially when they seem to favor you. Uhud served as a stark test of discipline. It highlighted that worldly attachments, the desire for immediate spoils, and disregarding divine instructions, even if they seem minor or inconvenient in the heat of battle, can lead to catastrophic consequences.
You can almost feel the regret.
Imagine the gut-wrenching realization for those archers, watching their comrades being attacked from behind, knowing their decision, their lapse, had directly caused it. It was a profound reminder that human effort, however skillful, must always be coupled with divine guidance and submission. It taught them that true victory isn't just about prevailing over an external enemy, but about prevailing over one's own lower self, one's impulses, one's greed, maybe.
And then, adding insult to injury, there was this psychological campaign right after the battle, designed to further demoralize them in their weakened state. So a military defeat wasn't enough. It was immediately followed by this shrewd psychological offensive. What were the specific whispers and threats designed to shatter their resolve?
Yes, exactly. Abu Sufyan, the Quraysh leader at the time, wasn't content with just the military setback. He knew the Muslim community was vulnerable both physically and psychologically. He tried to exploit this by launching a very shrewd psychological warfare campaign. He sent an agent, some reports mention a man named Muawiyah ibn al-Mughira back towards Medina to spread a terrifying rumor. The rumor was essentially, the Quraysh aren't done. They're amassing an even larger, overwhelming army, far greater than the one at Uhud, and they're preparing to march on Medina to finish the Muslims off completely.
Just pure fear-mongering.
Pure fear-mongering. His goal was deeply psychological. To instill a fear so profound that it would paralyze the Muslims, prevent them from regrouping, prevent them from even considering another confrontation. He wanted to break their will, crush their spirit, and ensure they would never again pose a threat. It was a deliberate attempt to turn their physical defeat into total psychological capitulation.
So this raises the crucial question, what was the believers' response to this fear-mongering, this psychological warfare? Did they succumb to that terror? Did it work, or did something else happen entirely?
Well, here's where the verse comes directly into play. The Quran's account in Surah Āl Imrān, verse 173, records the exact opposite effect of what Abu Sufyan intended. It's quite remarkable. The verse describes those to whom people, meaning the rumor monger, said, "Indeed, the people the Quraysh have gathered against you, so fear them." That was the message. Be afraid. But instead of succumbing to fear, the Quran uses the phrase "faikshahum," meaning so fear them, a direct challenge to their resolve. The news of this impending threat only increased their faith. فَزَادَهُمْ إِيمَانًا. Their resolute and immediate response was the powerful, defiant recitation of this very verse. Ḥasbunā Allāhu wa ni'mal wakeel. Allah is sufficient for us, and He is the best disposer of affairs.
Wow. So in their moment of weakness facing this threat, that was their reflex.
That was their reflex. It wasn't just spoken as an empty word. It was a declaration of unshakable conviction, born from the deepest recesses of their hearts, right in the face of overwhelming odds. Imagine the scene. Recently defeated, mourning their losses, physically and emotionally vulnerable, yet facing down this new, terrifying threat with renewed spiritual power. And the Quran doesn't just report this historically. It reveals a profound mechanism of spiritual purification and transformation. The trials at Uhud, including the psychological warfare that followed, served to expose the inner state of the community. It distinguished the sincere believers who held deep faith from those whose resolve was perhaps wavering, or those with hypocritical intentions.
So the test wasn't punishment.
It wasn't punishment in the sense of simple retribution. It was more like a divine catalyst for spiritual growth, a refining fire. It filtered out the weak, perhaps, and strengthened the resolve of the strong. It compelled them to turn solely and completely to Allah when all worldly means seemed to be failing or inadequate.
So adversity didn't just test them, it fundamentally transformed them, forging an even stronger bond with the divine when they had nowhere else to turn.
Exactly. That's the core insight here. The psychological warfare, rather than weakening the faithful, actually compelled them to turn more deeply, more sincerely to their ultimate source of strength. This principle suggests that adversity, no matter how dire it seems, is actually a divine opportunity for spiritual maturation. It has the power to transform external threats into internal declarations of unwavering trust in Allah. The true measure of a believer's strength, therefore, lies not in the absence of fear, because fear is a natural human emotion, especially in such circumstances, but in the ability to convert that fear into fortitude, into a steadfast resolve. And how? By entrusting their affairs completely to the divine. It's a remarkable transformation of inner state, moving from a position of vulnerability to one of profound spiritual empowerment. Is truly an aha moment for understanding spiritual resilience, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That reframing is powerful. Okay, so this concept of tawakkul, divine reliance, sounds incredibly powerful, almost like a complete surrendering of outcomes to a higher power. But you mentioned earlier, and this seems really important, that it's not a passive concept. This is a common point of confusion, isn't it? That idea that you can just sort of trust in God and sit back without doing anything yourself.
This is absolutely critical, and it's probably where many people, maybe even sincere believers sometimes, fundamentally misunderstand the true nature of tawakkul. Authentic tawakkul is a state of the heart, yes, but it must be integrated with practical action. It's not abstract or passive, like simply wishing for something and expecting it to materialize without any effort on your part.
Right, that sounds more like wishful thinking.
Exactly. Or even negligence, perhaps. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, clarified this beautifully, consistently, through both his teachings and his actions. He demonstrated that human effort is an indispensable part of this reliance. It's a dynamic interplay, a partnership, not a one-sided expectation.
All right, here's where it truly gets interesting and practical. Tell us about the famous hadith, the story of the camel. It really drives this point home and cuts right to the chase of that misconception about passivity.
Yes, the camel hadith. It's a foundational narration reported by Imam al-Tirmidhi and others, attributed to Anas ibn Malik. It perfectly illustrates this essential balance. It describes a situation where a Bedouin man came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and was about to leave his camel untied. Just leave it there. And he stated confidently, "I put my trust in Allah," as if tying it would show a lack of trust. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, upon hearing this, responded with the now famous, profoundly insightful instruction: tie your camel first, and then put your trust in Allah.
Tie your camel first. That's so simple, yet so profound. It just encapsulates the entire philosophy so perfectly, doesn't it? What deeper implications does that have for our day-to-day decisions, from career choices to personal relationships, even maybe how we approach global challenges?
It truly does. This seemingly simple statement provides a comprehensive blueprint for life itself. It completely resolves that misconception we talked about, that you can simply pray for a result or claim divine reliance without putting in the necessary effort or taking practical steps. The act of taking all available means, of exerting one's best effort, is not a sign of a lack of trust in Allah. Quite the opposite. It's often seen as a prerequisite for true trust. The effort itself, when done with sincere intention and adherence to ethical means, is considered an act of worship in Islam.
So the work is part of the worship.
In a sense, yes. Think of it this way. Tying the camel is the servant's part. That's the human effort, the practical measures within our capability, our responsibility. We have to do that. Protecting it from unforeseen calamities like theft or injury or a sudden storm, that is Allah's part. That's the realm beyond our direct control and knowledge. So we do our best, we fulfill our responsibilities, we take the necessary precautions, and then we rely on the divine for what we cannot control. It's about empowering ourselves through action, while simultaneously finding peace in surrendering the ultimate outcome.
And there's another narration, too, isn't there? Something that further reinforces this about actively censuring inaction. That sounds quite strong.
Yes, that's right. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is reported to have censured inaction, which is known as al-ajiz in Arabic. It implies a kind of helplessness, powerlessness, or even sloth. He stated something to the effect of, Allah censures inaction or helplessness, but it is your duty to use means to be resourceful and diligent, following which, when you find yourself powerless against odds, then say, Allah is all-sufficient for me and the best one to trust in. Ḥasbunā Allāhu wa ni'mal wakeel. In that case, the singular form.
Okay, so there's a clear sequence.
A very clear and crucial sequence. First, exert all human effort to the best of your ability. Use your intellect, your resources, your skills. After you have exhausted all the means at your disposal, after you've tied your camel, metaphorically speaking, and if you find yourself still powerless or facing an uncertain outcome despite your best efforts, then you fully submit the outcome to the will of Allah, declaring your trust in Him, using that powerful phrase. It clearly defines the stages. Action first, then reliance on the outcome. It dispels any notion that true faith means sitting idly by.
So it's really about understanding a spectrum of reliance, isn't it?
Yeah.
And distinguishing authentic, active trust from something that might just be a less effective form of passivity or maybe even irresponsibility disguised as piety. It's a dynamic tension, a constant calibration between striving with all your might and then gracefully letting go of the reins. How do we find that balance in an increasingly demanding world? It feels like a constant struggle.
Precisely. It is a delicate yet powerful balance.
Yeah.
And you're right, it requires constant calibration. If we look at the spectrum of Tawakkul, maybe we can distinguish more clearly between what is authentic and what is misguided. First, there's authentic Tawakkul. This approach involves taking all available means, actively seeking knowledge, planning, being proactive in your efforts. It views personal strength, intellect, resources, opportunities as blessings from Allah, things to be utilized effectively and responsibly.
Using the gifts you're given?
Exactly. You plan meticulously, you work diligently, you put in your maximum effort, and then, crucially, you submit the result to Allah. You understand that despite your best efforts, the ultimate outcome is not solely in your hands. The mindset here is one of seeking Allah's help and guidance while you are taking deliberate practical steps. For example, a student doesn't just pray for good grades. They study diligently, attend classes, seek help when needed, revise thoroughly, and then they pray for success and trust the outcome.
Right. They tied their camel.
They tied their camel. A business person doesn't just hope for profit. They research the market, develop a solid product or service, market it aggressively, manage finances carefully, and then they trust in divine provision for the ultimate success or failure. It's a partnership between human effort and divine support. Now, in stark contrast, you have misguided passivity. This is characterized by sitting idle, abandoning effort altogether, and simply waiting for miracles to happen without any corresponding action. It wrongly views personal effort as somehow demonstrating a sign of mistrust in Allah, as if working hard means you don't trust God enough to just hand it to you.
That's a dangerous distortion.
It is. This perspective expects a result without fulfilling any prerequisite actions, justifying inaction by merely claiming trust in Allah. It can lead to stagnation, a lack of accountability, blaming others or fate, and ultimately a sense of victimhood or disillusionment when desired outcomes don't magically materialize. Imagine someone wanting a harvest but never planting seeds or never watering the ground, or someone wanting to win a race but never training, just showing up on the day expecting a miracle. That's not Tawakkul, that's neglecting the means, the asbab, that God Himself has established in the world and provided us with.
Okay, that distinction is really clear.
So, true Tawakkul, therefore, is the fusion. It's the combination of maximum human effort using the asbab, or means we employ, with absolute divine reliance for the ultimate outcome. This integrated framework provides a comprehensive guide for all of life's pursuits. Whether you're studying for that exam, actively seeking a livelihood through work and enterprise, navigating a personal crisis by seeking therapy, support, and making plans, or even working towards larger goals like social justice or environmental protection. The verse, Ḥasbunā Allāhu wa ni'mal wakeel, offers profound peace and contentment after the effort has been exhausted, not as a substitute for that effort. It's the peace of knowing you've done everything you humanly could. You've tied every knot on that camel rope, and now the rest is in the best, most trustworthy hands possible. It allows you to move forward without the crushing weight of ultimate responsibility for uncontrollable variables.
Okay, so given all this depth, the linguistic meaning, the historical context, the balance with effort, how does this ancient verse provide a practical blueprint for addressing very modern problems? Things like the widespread anxiety, the fear, the relentless overthinking that so many of us experience today in our fast-paced, often uncertain world.
That's really the heart of its relevance today, isn't it? This verse, Ḥasbunā Allāhu wa ni'mal wakeel, offers a truly powerful and, importantly, accessible remedy for these pervasive challenges. When we're confronted with a perceived threat, maybe a daunting task at work, a major life decision with unknown consequences, a global crisis unfolding on the news, or an overwhelming personal situation, our initial, very human response is often fear, stress, and a profound sense of helplessness.
Yeah, the feeling that it's all on you.
Exactly. We feel the weight of the world on our shoulders, often convinced we must somehow control every possible variable, anticipate every outcome, to secure a positive result. It's exhausting. By consciously declaring this verse with understanding, a person actively cedes the illusion of absolute control because, let's face it, in reality, we have very little ultimate control over many things, and effectively transfers their burden to the all-powerful and all-wise. This phrase is a profound form of cognitive restructuring for a believer. It forces a reframing of the problem. It shifts the internal narrative from a debilitating, I am helpless against this, I can't possibly manage this outcome, what if it all goes wrong, to a liberating, Allah is sufficient for me. He is the best guardian and I've done my part. I've tied my camel.
So the fundamental change in how you perceive and internalize challenges, moving from feeling like an isolated individual carrying the burden to feeling supported.
Precisely. You move from a position of isolated individual burden to one of divinely supported action and trust.
So it's not just a mantra you repeat mindlessly then. It's a deep, conscious mental recalibration of your entire outlook, an active shifting of internal energy. Can you give us some concrete, relatable, modern scenarios where this kind of cognitive restructuring truly makes a difference?
Absolutely. It's far from mindless repetition. Let's take a few examples.
Yeah.
Imagine you're facing significant job uncertainty. Perhaps you've been laid off, or your industry is in flux, which happens a lot these days.
Very common.
The natural response is panic, right? Endless what-if scenarios, sleepless nights worrying about bills, the future. If you apply Hasbunā Allāhu wa ni'mal wakeel correctly, you first tie your camel. You diligently update your resume, you network proactively, you apply for relevant jobs, maybe you learn new skills to adapt. You exhaust every reasonable human effort. Then, you internalize the hearse. You acknowledge that despite your best efforts, the ultimate outcome, which job you get, when you get it, if it's the perfect one, isn't entirely yours to determine. This allows you to release that relentless anxiety about whether you'll get the job, when, or if it's exactly what you pictured.
So you stop the endless worrying loop.
You stop the loop. You trust that the best disposer of affairs, Tawakkul, will guide the outcome to what is truly best for you in the long run, even if it's a path you hadn't envisioned. This doesn't mean you stop trying, not at all. It means you stop worrying obsessively about the uncontrollable aspects. You act, and then you trust. Or consider, say, a challenging health diagnosis. The initial fear can be overwhelming naturally. Again, you tie your camel, you seek the best available medical advice, you follow the treatment plan diligently, you research your condition responsibly, maybe make necessary lifestyle changes. You take every practical step you can.
Right, you do the work.
You do the work. But then there's the fear of the unknown, isn't there? The prognosis, the progression, the ultimate outcome. Residing and reflecting on Hasbunā Allāhu wa ni'mal wakeel becomes your mental and spiritual recalibration point. It's a conscious act of surrendering that ultimate fear, that existential dread perhaps, to a higher power. It's affirming that your life, your health, your ultimate destiny are in the hands of the one who is most wise and most merciful. This doesn't magically cure the illness necessarily, but it can profoundly alleviate the psychological and spiritual burden. It allows for inner peace and mental strength to face the trial with equanimity, with sabor, or patience. The very act of reciting it, when done with understanding and sincerity, is a deliberate act of submitting one's will and accepting a higher decree. And that can truly relieve the heart of its most profound worries, the kind that keep us up at night. It's about letting go of the need to control the uncontrollable and finding empowerment in that trust.
That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned spiritual resilience earlier. How does this verse specifically contribute to developing that resilience, especially in the context of accepting divine decree, or al-qadr, which for many people can be a really challenging concept to fully embrace without falling into fatalism?
Right, the connection to al-qadr is crucial and often misunderstood. The historical context of the verse itself, following the immense trial of Uhud, vividly demonstrates a core lesson in spiritual resilience. Trials and tribulations aren't just experiences to be endured or, ideally, avoided. Rather, from this perspective, they are divine opportunities for faith to increase and deepen. The companion's faith didn't waver or break in the face of defeat and renewed threats. The Quran tells us it grew. It was refined and strengthened by the fire of adversity, turning perceived weakness into profound inner strength. This points to a kind of spiritual law. Genuine trust is often forged and proven in the crucible of difficulty.
So challenges aren't just obstacles, they're potential catalysts.
Potential catalysts for growth, exactly. And this principle of trust, leading to protection, sometimes even miraculous intervention, is further substantiated by the incredible example of Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him. He uttered this exact phrase, Ḥasbunā Allāhu wa ni'mal wakīl, when he was thrown into a massive, raging fire by his oppressive community. They sought to punish him for his uncompromising monotheistic beliefs, for challenging their idols. Imagine the scene. A colossal fire, so immense that traditional accounts suggest even birds couldn't fly safely over it without being singed. And Ibrahim, alone, facing what seemed like certain agonizing death, his absolute reliance on Allah, his tawakkul, was so profound, so pure, that it caused the fire itself to become coolness and safety for him, as the Quran famously records.
Wow.
It's a tangible, miraculous fulfillment of his unwavering trust, where the very laws of nature were seemingly suspended in response to his complete surrender and reliance.
That story of Prophet Ibrahim is absolutely chilling and awe-inspiring. It demonstrates a level of trust that feels almost, well, beyond human comprehension sometimes. What can we learn from that extreme example for our own, perhaps more mundane, daily challenges? I mean, it literally changed his circumstances.
Indeed, it's a powerful and, yes, surprising narrative of divine intervention as a direct result of complete reliance. It teaches us that while our challenges might not involve being thrown into a literal fire, the underlying principle remains potent. When we have truly exhausted all our means, done our due diligence, tied our camel, and then placed our complete, sincere trust in Allah, He can and often does intervene in ways we cannot possibly imagine or predict, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. This verse and its surrounding context also powerfully underscore the importance of accepting divine decree, al-qadr. But again, this means recognizing and submitting to God's ultimate plan and wisdom, which encompasses all events, perceived as good or bad by us, knowing that His wisdom is perfect. However, it's crucial, as you noted, to distinguish this from fatalism. Al-qadr doesn't mean resigning yourself to inaction or apathy. It means accepting the outcome with contentment after you've tied your camel and done your absolute best. It's acceptance of the result, not inaction beforehand.
That's a key clarification. Effort first, then acceptance.
Precisely. And look what happened after Uhud. Despite the initial setback, the grief, the fear from the rumors, Allah promised the believers who responded with increased faith and this declaration, He promised them a mighty favor and a great bounty. And that promise was fulfilled. They were not harmed further by Abu Sufyan's perceived reinforcing army. That threat never actually materialized. He himself reportedly lost his nerve and turned back to Mecca. In fact, the companions returned from that expedition not just unharmed, but with both spiritual bounty. Their faith increased, their resolve purified, and worldly blessings too. Some accounts mention they engaged in profitable trade during a market season while they were out awaiting the enemy that never arrived.
So they actually benefited materially as well.
They benefited materially and spiritually. It shows that sincere trust in Allah, coupled with appropriate action, results in a positive outcome, even if that outcome isn't immediately apparent or if it doesn't look exactly like what we initially expected or hoped for. The fulfillment of this trust can manifest as worldly success, like that profitable trade, or, perhaps more importantly, as a profound spiritual bounty, increased faith, inner peace, closeness to God, as was clearly the case for the believers at Uhud, or often a combination of both.
So wrapping this section up, what does this all mean for us today, regardless of our specific beliefs or background maybe? Is there a universal message here or something that truly resonates beyond its original context and specific religious foundation?
Well, what's truly fascinating, I think, is how, despite its specific historical context and its deep roots in Islamic theology, the underlying principle and the practical application of this verse seems to transcend time and place. It is, in essence, a kind of universal formula, perhaps, for anyone seeking strength and peace to confront life's inherent uncertainties. Whether those uncertainties are deeply personal hardships, professional challenges, that overwhelming feeling of comparison fueled by social media, or even global crises that seem utterly beyond any individual's control. The core message of surrendering the ultimate outcome to a higher power after exerting one's best effort. That seems deeply resonant across many wisdom traditions.
That makes sense. The need for both effort and letting go.
Exactly. The verse encapsulates the essence of submission to a higher will, which can provide a purpose and meaning to life's struggles that purely worldly matters alone often fail to provide. In a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable, it's a profound declaration. A reminder that a person's ultimate security and success lie not solely in their own finite abilities, which are always limited, always prone to error, nor in the fleeting and often unpredictable nature of the world itself, but in an unwavering, conscious reliance on the divine, on the best disposer of affairs. It offers a stable, unshakable anchor in a turbulent world, allowing for a deep, abiding peace that external circumstances cannot easily disturb. #, now check outro.
Wow. What an incredibly deep dive into just one powerful verse. We've really journeyed quite far, haven't we? From its profound linguistic roots, understanding that comprehensive nature of sufficiency and the active, perfect role of the best disposer, Tawakkul, all the way to its historical crucible in the aftermath of Uhud. Seeing how Ḥasbunā Allāhu wa ni'mal wakil serves as this multi-layered teaching on monotheism, Tawhid, and also on an active, dynamic form of reliance, not passive at all.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, I think the central timeless lesson derived from this verse and the stories around it is that integrated framework of effort and reliance. That concept of tawakkul in its authentic form. The Prophet's instruction, tie your camel first and then put your trust in Allah. It really is a timeless guide. It clarifies once and for all that neglecting practical means, neglecting the asbab, is not faith. It's actually closer to a censurable form of passivity or negligence. True reliance is that fusion, that dynamic balance of maximum human effort with absolute conscious submission to the divine will for the ultimate outcome. It's a partnership, really, not just the passive waiting game.
And in our modern context, this verse really does provide a tangible, actionable blueprint for living a life freer from paralyzing fear and anxiety. It offers, as you said, a form of cognitive recalibration, a mental and spiritual restructuring. It shifts our perspective from that state of constant worry and the illusion of needing absolute control to one of complete active trust in a flawless, benevolent plan once we've done our part. The ultimate success, as taught by this verse, isn't just about worldly gain or achieving every single one of our desired outcomes exactly as we plan.
Right.
But perhaps more profoundly, it's about the contentment and the inner peace that come from knowing your most crucial affairs, the things beyond your control, are in the hands of the best disposer. We truly hope this deep dive has given you, our listeners, some profound aha moments, maybe a new, empowering perspective on navigating life's challenges, both the big ones and the small, everyday ones.
And perhaps this raises an important question for you to consider personally. What does it mean for you right now to identify your own camel to tie in your life, in whatever situation you're facing? What are the specific efforts, the tangible steps, the means you must actively employ in your current challenges or goals? And then how might combining that diligent, proactive effort with a profound, active trust in something greater in the best disposer of affairs? How might that reshape your approach? How might it help you move from anxiety and overwhelm to a state of empowered peace, even amidst uncertainty? Something truly worth mulling over, perhaps, until our next deep dive.